Addressing a question without notice to the Minister for Regional Development on the topic of bank closures in the region.
Is leave granted?
Last week, the Advertiser reported that Westpac is closing their bank branch in Coober Pedy later this month, leaving the town without any bank. Over the last 7 years, at least 50 regional bank branches have closed in South Australia. At least 22 towns have been left without a bank branch at all, including places such as Angaston, Burra, Kapunda, Mannum, Roxby Downs, Strathalbyn, Tailem Bend and Willunga. And last week, the ATM at Coober Pedy ran out of cash. As a result, residents could only withdraw cash from the post office during business hours or by driving 500 kilometres to Port Augusta. My question to the Minister for Regional Development is, what action has the Minister taken to date to ensure that banks in regional towns and communities stay open?
Call the Minister for Primary Industries and Regional Development.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank the honourable member for his question. And certainly the decisions taken by banks, which don't appear anymore to have a sense of social responsibility, is very disappointing. The member refers to the number of banks that have closed across regional areas, and I know in terms of the closure at Coober Pedy, I think both the member for Giles and the member for Stewart have had conversations with me about this. It is most unfortunate when these large corporations don't take any responsibility for providing services to regional communities. It is something that is regrettable. Unfortunately, part of the society within which we operate, has private companies making these decisions, means that it's not something that has a direct, that we have a direct opportunity to impact. But I am certainly willing to talk with my colleagues who have a more direct responsibility in terms of business and so on in the other place, and come back if there's any additional information that I can provide.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Mr Sims.
Has the Minister put her concerns to Westpac and asked them to reconsider their decision?
Minister.
I have not done so, and I will certainly check whether any of my colleagues have done so, which is quite possible.
Further supplementary, the Honourable Mr Sims.
Given the Minister's concerns and the potential implications for regional development, why hasn't she raised these with Westpac?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his supplementary question. And it comes down to those areas which I think is about really consumer pressure on those banks. We need to have more of an opportunity to influence. I mean, a private corporation will make its own decisions, which is unfortunate. I will certainly see which of my colleagues have taken other actions as well, because of course this has portfolio. Regional development is very, very broad, but I'll see what my colleagues in the other place have done so.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Lansink.
Does the Minister consider that part of her role is to represent consumers in country and regional SA?
Minister.
And therefore advocate for their issues? No.
Yeah, I've had a lot of very positive feedback about my engagement in regional areas on very, very many and varied topics.
Where have you been?
Where have I been?
No.
I have been almost everywhere, my colleague. Almost everywhere, Attorney, Mr President. And I think it has been actually in stark contrast to the behaviour of the former government. I know last week when I was in the outback, I was in Andamuka, Roxby Downs, William Creek, among others, and the feedback there, and I've got to say, those areas are not necessarily areas that one would think are particularly Labor-leaning areas. And yet the response from so many people that I spoke to there was, we are so glad to see government ministers. And in fact, I was joined by the Honourable Christine McBain, Federal Minister, as well as the Minister for Regional Roads and Local Government, the member for Stewart in the other place. And we were told that this was the first time that a federal minister had visited that area in more than a decade. The first time there had ever been a federal minister in a decade or more. So I think that really is illustrative of the type of interest that we have from those opposite despite their constant bleating about how they're in touch with the regions. They like to talk the talk, but they don't like to walk the walk, if walking means getting out of Adelaide.
Minister, bring it back.
Now, when it comes down to the other times that we do hear about those opposite and their colleagues actually getting out to the regions, what do we hear? We hear that the Leader of the Opposition in the other place, he was just too good to eat the chicken in the Mount Gambier venue. He was too chicken to eat the chicken in the Mount Gambier venue. In fact, he got up and stormed out. How is this?
Order.
Order, Mr. President.
Order. There's a point of order.
This is completely irrelevant to the question that was asked about banks, and quite frankly is quite embarrassing for people living in regional communities. I asked a serious question about people's access to money, and what we've got is a lot of irrelevant nonsense.
Minister, I've been generous giving you a broad range, but this needs to come to a conclusion. Finish your answer and then we can move on, please.
Yes, certainly. And if the supplementary question from the Honourable Ms Lensink was irrelevant nonsense, I guess that's not my fault.
Order.